All right, you're welcome along to Thursday's football show. I'm delighted to be joined on the line by the former Republic of Ireland international, still playing with Burton Albion in League One, Stephen Quinn. How are you keeping, Stephen?
Grand, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
How's the head with all that's going on?
Probably a bit all over the shop, to be honest. Don't know what to be doing myself at times, but I suppose the kids keep me going.
Yeah, what is it, 3 kids?
3 kids, yeah, 2 boys and a girl, and they're all under, they're 6 and under, so it's relentless. I'm looking forward to the season, hopefully starting back.
Yeah, I'm in a similar scenario myself. I'd say we'll do well to get through the next half an hour without somebody bursting through the door at some stage.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Is it a bit of a shock to the system? Funnily enough, you're someone who I always remember being around the Irish camp, and I think the family would have been around quite a bit, and maybe the kids would have been around a bit. You always, for some reason, you came across as one of those players who was always a bit of a family man. Like, were you somebody who'd be well used to being at home with the kids, or is this a bit of a shock?
I wasn't at home as much as I am now, obviously, but it is a shock to the system. Like, hats off to the missus, what she does, and trying juggling her job and the kids as well. But no, I am a big family man. You know, I'm kind of based in Sheffield and playing at Burton. I'm always home. Like, I just commute. Actually, I commute to Hull as well. And when I moved to Reading, the family moved down as well. So yeah, I'm definitely a family man. I come from a big family as well, and we were quite close as well. So.
And did I read that your wife's working as a nurse?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did an interview last week actually. And yeah, she's been put on a COVID ward. It's not a line of work, but she's obviously got asked to go into it. So that's a bit stressful, a bit worrying at this moment in time. Like, she does 2 long days a week, but it's just kind of a natural progression for her. She's just took it on the chin and kind of cracked on with it, really.
Yeah, geez, that's got to be real stress for you as a husband and as a father. Like, have you had to separate the family at all, or?
Not as yet. I mean, she comes home and gets showered and changed straight away and stays kind of away from the kids for a bit. But at the minute, she doesn't have to. But I think if she does eventually have to do that, I think she'd step aside from it, because the kids are so young and stuff like that. But no, she's looked forward to it and rolled their sleeves up. And to be honest, the job they do, like, I'm baffled by, I kind of fire questions at her every time she comes home, you know, because obviously it's a massive pandemic, and I'm just trying to fish some information out of her. But no, I just think the nurses, they're so natural, and they just get on with it, really. So yeah, I'm just so glad that they get the credit now that they deserve.
Yeah, it's a shame in many ways that it's taken a global pandemic for people to realise just what a heroic job the frontline staff, the medical professionals, the doctors, the nurses, they do. Like, they are the ones, they're not running away from this. They're very much front and centre where the trouble is. Like, and particularly in the NHS, like, we're looking in Ireland probably a little bit aghast at some of the things that happened in England and the way that they've reacted to this and how slow at times they were. Like, what sort of sense are you getting from her as to how things are going?
Well, yeah, like last week they said it's probably going to peak last week, but now it seems to think it's going to be mid-May maybe. But I'm always online looking at RTE and stuff, the news coming in, and in touch with my brothers and stuff, and to see from afar, from the outside looking in, Ireland has reacted really well. I thought. I don't know what it's like over there, but my brother seems to think they've reacted well, and everyone's come together. I mean, I would like to see, I think you're right, and Britain's kind of been a bit sluggish and a bit slack, because they knew what was coming, really, and maybe they could have reacted a bit quicker and better. But it is what it is, and we are where we are now. But hopefully, we can kind of stop the rot.
Yeah, I think everybody's probably had to deal with this in their own way, and it's such a shock to everybody's system. Like, for you, then, living with a medical professional and knowing that she may end up in this sort of scenario, like, when you first heard about this and that football was stopping and that she would be on the front line, like, how did you manage to get through that? Are you still trying to deal with it?
Shitting it, really, to be honest. Shitting it. But she's kind of calmed the whole situation down. She just kind of said it's just everyday stuff still, really. You know, obviously she's just more susceptible a bit, I suppose, but then she's got lots of PPE training and and they say she seems to think that they've got a lot of equipment, which is fine. And I just kind of stressed her to just stay safe and do as much as you can. I mean, they got this traffic light system in the hospitals, and it seems to be running quite well. So she says to me, but I mean, it's still scary when your wife's involved in it, and you know, but I'm trying not to change it or try and get too panicked with the kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Try and keep it simple and try and tell them as little as we can.
Yeah, and I'd imagine as well, like, I think so many people are obsessed with the news at the moment and just can't switch off, that you need to try and get that balance right as well. Like, you don't want to be switching on the news at 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock and hearing all these horror stories. And you need to keep up a brave face for your wife as well, that she's not coming home to you absolutely panicked after a tough day at work.
Yeah, big time. I think she dreads coming home to me after with the kids. I think they'll probably prefer to work on a COVID ward than be at home with the 3 kids. No, yeah, I've just got to stay strong for her and, you know, kind of keep backing her and stuff like that. What can I do? The selfless act that these nurses are putting themselves in front of, it's incredible to see. So, I mean, I can only be just kind of there for her. She's been there for me all through my career, and when we've had to move and stuff like that, it's the least I can do for her.
Yeah, on that, because listen, sports people have to be somewhat selfish because your club expects you to be. You have to go with whatever their routine is, and the rest of your family, they just have to go along with that. And thankfully, a lot of sports people are well rewarded, and it sort of goes with the gig. Is this the first time in your life, really, that it's not all about you, that it's actually all about her?
Yeah, it's funny enough you say that, because she did mention that. At least it's all about me now, and now you know how I feel and stuff like that, which is exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a shock to my system, but I take that now. I take it now with what she's putting herself through, and you know what she's doing for the world really, and trying to combat this. So yeah, like I said, I just got to get on with it and try and be there for her.
Yeah, I guess in the one sense, if you have 3 young kids for the majority of the day by yourself, you're being kept very busy. And like, by the sounds of it, I think everyone knows you come from a real strong footballing family and a very, very close family. Is it just trying to talk to as many people as possible and not let your head get into a space where you're worrying and panicking?
Yeah, it's difficult. I know. I mean, I'm approaching kind of retirement, and like you work with a lot of the lads, like David Moyler you mentioned, and lads coming towards the end of their career. It's a big worry. It's a stress, you know, to what as to what you're going to go into next. You like a lot of things, but you know, how do you replace the irreplaceable kind of thing? So, I mean, this is a bit of a break, I suppose, as well, to get your head together. I mean, I'm online and literally with Robbie Brady, Paul McShane last night. We had a Zoom quiz. Last night.
Who won?
Well, it was another lad we used to play with at Hull called Joe Dudgeon. He won last night. McShane won last week now, and we haven't heard the end of it. But just things like that. Speaking of McShane all the time, you know, about his time at Rochdale, and just trying to bounce things off each other, and you know, and what sort of direction we could go to. So I think this break has been a bit of an eye opener for that, to see what we're going to do after when we retire, really.
Yeah, you can have a bit too much time in your hands to think about these things. But maybe, as you say, at your stage, what are you now, 34?
34 now, yeah.
It comes at a good time where the end is coming down the track at some stage, and you need plans. Just before we get onto that, you're probably in a very good position then to analyse the sort of the attitude towards footballers and football's reaction to this crisis, where probably started with Matt Hancock, the health minister. Really, it felt like hanging footballers out to dry, Premier League footballers in particular, and trying to back them into a corner where they had to make some sort of a donation. It seems they've done that Jordan Henderson and the captains came together and they've made a substantial donation, and the Premier League have got in behind. Yet still there's constant rows about pay cuts. Are they beneficial? Are they not? What's your take on how football has reacted, and are we reading and are we putting too much pressure on football to react in a certain way?
Yeah, I think that was a big statement to come out and kind of go for footballers, you know. I don't get why, you know, like people and members of parliament kind of went for footballers like that. It's a bit naughty, to be honest. You know, and then to be fair, footballers reacted, like you say, the Premier, Jordan Henderson getting a team together, and then I mean, what the Premier League boys have done and donated is incredible, to be fair. You know, they get tired with this brush, but I mean, they can be so generous, footballers and stuff like that. But I can only see it from my level, and people think at League One. I've played in probably League One, League Two, and League One, Championship, and Premier League. But I mean, at League One level, lads aren't on massive amounts of money. You know, it doesn't drip down that much. So I mean, they've got their own mortgages to pay. It's all relative, really. You know, so if they're getting pressured on to taking cuts, but they've got mortgages to pay and stuff like that, it's difficult. You know, and this is only going off the group messages at Burton Albion, where a lot of lads are under stress like anybody. So I mean, like I said to you, it's all relative to the different levels people are at and what way they live. So to kind of put it all on footballers and kind of tar them all with the same brush is a bit bang out of order for myself.
Yeah, there is a real tarring of the same brush, because like, even I think, look at your situation, people would look from afar and go, 18 Republic of Ireland caps, you know, part of a Euro 2016 squad, played in the Premier League, played in the FA Cup final just 5-6 years ago. I think most people would think that your wife would be sitting at home comfortable, not out working, that, you know, that why would she? That you'd be set up for life even with just a couple of years in the Premier League. That actually footballers have perfectly normal lives away from football, an awful lot of them.
Yeah, most definitely. And then, like, it's a big bubble we're in for 10 years, maybe. And that's if you're lucky, if you can stay injury free. Like, I mean, Dave Molloy retired early with his knees and stuff like that. But it's a bit backwards, I suppose, as a career to everybody else, you know. And people are probably only starting out and peaking in their jobs now and whatever else. But we're retiring at 35 if we're lucky. So I mean, you build a pot up and then you just need to go into it's not going to last forever for me anyway. So I need something to fall back on, like a lot of players. So it's not all, you know, big sports flash cars and massive houses and stuff. It just doesn't filter down the levels that much, and that's where I kind of only realised over the last 18 months since I've joined Burton Albion and stuff like that, where I've had to take a step back. And I mean, I've read a few books and stuff like that to kind of just realise, wow, I need to have a look at myself here. And, you know, there's could be 30, 40 years ahead of me here. But I need to find something that I love, again, to transition into.
Were you the type of guy that during those good times you lost the run of yourself, or have you always been quite steady?
I've been fairly steady, like, you know, but there's times where you just, I can see the bubble that footballers are in. I can see how a lot of footballers could go bankrupt and could lose the run of themselves, you know. But I've been quite steady, so I think I've done all right. So, but it's now the transition and trying to learn off financial advisors and trying to go in the right direction.
Those Zoom calls you're having then with the likes of Paul McShane and Robbie Brady, and people are probably, if there's a positive and if there's a few positives out of this thing, people are probably having more honest conversations at the moment about their lives and about their more honest opinions. Like, Robbie Brady's obviously at a very different stage of his career to yourself and Paul McShane, where you're wondering what's next and what you're going to do for the next 30, 40 years. He's still in that bubble, and maybe that bubble has got even bigger since you left the Premier League. Like, are you giving him advice to make sure that he realizes this is probably coming around the corner, these type of thoughts in the next 5 or 6 years, and you just have to let the young lads make their own mistakes?
No, I think you're right there. I think we're always there for Robbie. We always have been since we've been back at the Hull days, and yeah, we would, like, I mean, Robbie could hear myself and Mac are talking in the group message and stuff. So I think he knows and realizes that, yeah, I've got to kind of think ahead here and realise this isn't going to last forever and stuff like that. So I'd like to think that Robbie would be kind of listening and taking it on board. And I mean, just I see Endes lives in Sheffield and Johnny Egan lives in Sheffield now. So I'm always said to them, like, I'm always here if there's any advice that, or, you know, if they need any help on anything. I've made a few mistakes in my career myself and financially as well. So if they ever needed anything, that I'd be here to have a chat with and stuff like that, you know. So Yeah, the bubble is definitely growing because the money in the Premier League is gone nuts at the minute. So I'm kind of glad I'm out of the bubble of that, to be honest, because there's a different life out there, and you like you say, you could lose the run of yourself whilst you're in that bubble.
Yeah, the mistakes you made, and you don't need to go down the financial side of it, but and maybe there's not a huge amount of regrets, because I'm sure there was a certain amount of feeling like you lived the dream. But when you are talking to younger players, like what are the little bits of advice you feel you could give them that you picked up along the way?
I think I just caught the end of like the era where there was a lot of drinking culture and stuff, and I just came in, the Neil Warnock side back in Sheffield, in Sheffield United. So I caught the end of that era and stuff. But now the game is so involved to it, the physicality side of things, and I just realised that lads need to look after their bodies a lot more, and not kind of rely on physios in their club, kind of taking it more into their own hands of keeping their body fine-tuned and maybe going and looking at their own physiotherapists and stuff like that. Because I'm kind of glad I did that through my career, to stay on the pitch. Because I find over the years and looking at a lot of interviews of players, I could have done this, I could have played at a better level, but I got injured and this and that. But kind of blaming physios as well. They've got to take it into their own hands to keep themselves out on that pitch and not have that blame culture of, trying to blame somebody else that they didn't make as in their career and what have you. Like, so I've got nephews that want to try and play in the game as well, and I kind of, they've got to stay ahead of the game and kind of keep their bodies right more than anything, because that helps. As long as you're out on that pitch, then you're judged. So you need to keep your body at the highest peak.
Yeah, and it's important they hear that, because 17, 18-year-olds who want to be professional footballers, there's so many pitfalls. To have somebody who's been there, done that, made some of the mistakes as well, can take them aside. Maybe we don't do enough of that.
Yeah, and then just some really good big home truths, like sitting around on PlayStations, getting your head getting mushed, and just get up and work on something. And do you know what else I would definitely recommend for especially footballers that are playing in the game, to go and read books and do, the best thing I've ever done probably 5 years ago when I was down at Reading, was start reading books and listen to podcasts and, just learn about being outside that bubble. And I think that was really good for me and really helped me, to be honest with you, because I've lost a couple of my parents in my 20s. So I had a bit of a wobble in the middle of the 20s when I was playing for Sheffield United and stuff. So when I turned to books and podcasts and everything else, it kind of helped me mentally, because there is a lot of pressure on these young lads to perform, and especially in the Premier League. So they've got to take themselves away from it and kind of de-stress and maybe read books and, and not get caught up in the industry too much.
What sparked that turn? What was it that got you realizing that, you know what, it's not about just sitting around playing PlayStation, going out for a couple of drinks at the weekend after a match? What sparked it that, you know what, I need a little bit more, I want to educate myself that little bit more? What sparked that change?
I was breaking down. Like I said, my parents passed away when I was young, and that was difficult. So I was grieving, so to speak, and I didn't know what way to go about it. And I think it was probably a crossroads in my career and in my life, really. And to kind of take the right path, I was so happy to maybe, read, but I could have easily gone down the wrong road and went down into the drinking culture and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, I like a few points when I'm off, and stuff, but to kind of just throw myself into a few books, going to the chiropractors when I can, just staying on peak performance and keeping the mind busy. Mental health is massive in the game nowadays, and it probably was back in the day, but no one ever thought about it. Well, it was, but nobody ever talked about it. But now it's so big and so huge. I think if you keep your diet well, your body in peak condition, and like I said, reading some books and turning your hand to playing guitars or something like that, just to keep your mind occupied, because it's just as important.
And when you see maybe at Burton, the 17, 18-year-olds, they're not quite like they are at the Premier League academies, but if you're having those type of conversations, do you sense that they're aware of that they're a bit more aware of keeping their mental health in check and talking to people than you would have been 20 years ago?
Yeah, and then, I think that's right. But then I think maybe sometimes it's gone to the other side. where it's probably a little bit too soft at times to mollycoddle them, because when they do break into or come up to the first team, I don't think they're mentally ready for, I mean, you get hammered when you come up to the first team. It's a high levels when you come out to anyone's first team. It's a big step for a young lad to come through. So they've got to kind of be mentally strong enough to kind of to last the sessions and break into the team. So I think it's trying to find the right balance on, being mentally strong and mentally weak as well.
You mentioned your parents there and them sadly passing away when you were younger. What type of people were they? Because what a family they brought up with 3 children, 3 lads as professional footballers.
Yeah, there's lots of us in the family. They were just a hard working people. Like, my dad was a painter and decorator, worked at Dublin Airport and worked on the building sites, and he installed that into us really, from a young age. We didn't really finish school. Like, I think a lot of us finished after the juniors here, to be honest. I went on the FOSS course. Alan went on the FOSS course with, Morris Price. And that was good. They instilled hard work in us. And a lot of my other brothers went to the building sites with my dad and started forging a career in the painting, decorating game. So, I mean, the work ethic is there in the family. So, yeah, we were just working class from Clondalkin, and a lot of us, yeah, I'd imagine they're looking down on us, proud as punch.
The sort of thirst for knowledge you were talking about there, like, do you have any regrets about not doing your leaving cert, not staying in school for longer?
I kind of do, and I kind of don't, because the path wouldn't have opened up to, and I'm just so happy I did the FOSS course. So that fitness and that, I kind of got the professional kind of experience when I was 15, when I left school, because I was straight into a FOSS course of daily playing football. So the transition when I went to England was fine through the academy, because my body was all ready and I was ready to make that step and that transition. But now, I mean, I've been in touch with the PFA about going on some courses. I kind of forced my kids, my little boys, into after school education and topping them up, and I kind of push more education than football on my kids, to be honest, because I think it's brilliant. Education is key, to be honest with you.
Talking about your football career, then you're at Burton Albion at the moment at League One. You're playing pretty much week in, week out. Like, when you look at where you were at Reading, where you had a couple of years of very, very little football, is this just a real bonus period of your career that you thought might never happen?
It's definitely a bonus period. Yeah, when I came back, I thought it was done. I was pretty much retired. I had 4 months off. It was weird. And I just thought, how I can't just finish like this. But the thing is, and I come back to like saying looking after your body and stuff. The thing is that I had a kind of a guy in Sheffield, a masseur kind of guy, who worked for British Athletics, and I just naturally used him over the years playing for Sheffield United. Sorry.
Don't make that mistake.
No, I don't know why I said that. And I used him all through the years, but then when I moved to Reading, he couldn't commute down to see me, and I really feel the body broke down when I didn't see him over a few years. Came back up to Burton and to stay in Sheffield, and I've used him every week since. McShane has been using him. A couple of Sheffield United boys have been using him.
Right.
He works for British Athletics, and he's top notch. And I have to say, I owe him a lot, because he's kept me playing. He keeps me on the pitch every week.
And what does he do?
He's just brilliant at the mechanics. He just knows my body. He can loosen me up straight away, and I mean, he just keeps me at peak performance. And I couldn't thank him enough. And to be honest with you, he's kept me going and got me a couple of years out of Burton, and the body feels amazing now at the minute. I feel like it could go another couple of years, so I'm going to try and rinse it.
Ironically, the one game people probably think about from Burton over the last couple of years was the Manchester City League Cup semi-final last year, and the 9-0, which is probably the one game you've missed almost over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I just missed it as well, because I got the second game. I just had a bit of a groin problem, a bit of a groin niggle, and I just thought, if I go out there and break down after half an hour or something, it's going to stand in someone else's way of playing in a big game, and one of the younger lads that was chomping at the bit. So I just thought, I won't risk the body, and would have risked the rest of the season if I had tore my groin. So I just gave it the extra 10 days. And to be fair, I made the second leg, which wasn't so bad.
Yeah, aside from being 9-0 down going into it.
Yeah.
I remember Nigel Clough talking afterwards, and he spoke brilliantly and very honestly about what it meant for the players to play in a game, even with the result that the way City played, that would have done a lot of damage to a lot of teams. And I think City beat Watford 8-0 in the Premier League, so they can do that. Working with Nigel Clough, what's that been like?
I was going to say different, but it's more along the lines of the Neil Warnock era that I've been involved in. Old school, not kind of overly coached or putting too much pressure on players. It's very much old school. It's simplified. It's been really enjoyable, to be honest. I really enjoyed the last few years because I worked under a lot of managers that started going down the iPad route and all these different tactics and formations, and he kind of simplified as if to say it's not rocket science. Like it's the game of ball, really. So, and I quite enjoy. I've been quite enjoying it. The only one thing is, I really wish I was pushing higher up and we were in more of a playoff position, and I'd love to have another crack at maybe the championship, to be honest.
Yeah, 10, 11 points off the playoffs when football was suspended. So even if it does come back, it's unlikely. That's interesting what you talk about, because the obvious comparison you would maybe ask about when you mention the Clough is Martin O'Neill, who obviously spent so much time playing with Brian Clough, Nigel's father. And a lot of what you're saying would be, I'm going to say, an accusation about Martin O'Neill's style of management, that it's not the more modern style. And it's a big debate in Irish football all the time. Like, people look back at certain parts of Martin O'Neill's reign and were the team well enough prepared, that there was a huge amount of trust in the players, but maybe not the level of preparation that younger players in particular would be used to coming through academies at Premier League clubs. Have you thoughts on that, and the right way, the wrong way, and whether that sort of Nigel Clough, Martin O'Neill way only works for certain type of players?
I just think, and this is probably the best example, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way. Neil Warnock went about it a different way. Clough does. Martin O'Neill did, and Roy as well. They came from kind of that era as well. I played under Jaap Stam, who was total football. From the goalkeeper, you had to pass it out to the centre backs or right back, and then build up play and transition of play. And so that was, I played under both types. With Martin, we had a really successful period because we've had the older type players. We've had John O'Shea, we had Sheikh Even, we had Glenn Whelan, the likes of myself, Johnny Walters and stuff. Lads could adapt, and we did work on a lot of the training ground, but not as much as probably the modern day coach does, and we did well for that. But like you say, and that's the biggest thing, is that younger lads, the new generation coming through, are being coached to play out from the back, and then whether it was the Barcelona kind of era in the late 2000s that changed everything like that, and the game has evolved and moved on. So people are just kind of more talking about, they want to see better football, and a lot of the lads probably look to the manager now as to say, what way are we playing here? We need a system. We need a kind of way of playing. So not a lot of them can kind of adapt. I'm not saying that out of turn, and a lot of young lads, you kind of have to adapt in older skilled coaches because they simplify it. They don't want to pick you up in place of beauty and tell you, here, you got to go here, you got to go there. They feel like you should know the role as a footballer when you're coming up through the academies anyway. So I feel like a lot of the older skilled coaches like Nigel Clough and that, they feel like they don't have to explain as much as what other coaches do, because they want to play these systems.
Maybe it's an easier thing to work at club level as well, where you have a bit more time with the players to get your personality across. And you just look at someone like Robbie Brady and maybe Jeff Hendrick in particular, who you feel like under somebody like Sean Dyche at Burnley, you're probably getting a lot of information and a lot of positioning and told exactly what to do, and their job is to follow those instructions, where it's such a different environment than when they had come to Ireland and were probably given a bit more freedom, which they just weren't used to.
Yeah, well, that as well. And to be honest with you, it's got to be difficult, managing an international team, and then lads coming over after playing a game on a Saturday, a bit wounded from the game, picking their kind of niggles up, and then managers for the international only have like 10 days, probably even less, to try and get what they want out of the lads. But they've got to tiptoe around it because lads are still, if they're playing by their clubs back in, they could not train till the Thursday or something because they've got niggles and they're long seasons. So it's got to be difficult for international managers now when lads come in from club football, because it's so difficult when lads are absolutely knackered through the season, and rest is most important as well. So I find it difficult. I can imagine it being very difficult for an international manager.
Those conversations you've been having with Paul McShane then about what's next. What is next? Is there a McShane Quinn managerial dream team coming down the line? Are you going to stay in football?
It'd be ginger madness there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I didn't want to say.
No, Macker's got his badges and at the A and B. I think I've started them with the FAI, and I need to. That's when I got back into playing with Burton, so I haven't had a chance to kind of go and finish those. So I'm going to speak to people in the FAI about going back in to try and finish them. I went to a couple of international games under 15s with a friend of mine, Paul Ozam, that used to play with St. Pat's, and he's been brilliant. Those, helping and his tactics and everything else, he's been brilliant. But I'd like to think I would go down the coaching route, but we'll see. I mean, I'm still enjoying the game, and I want to keep playing. Maybe even if I can rinse another couple of years, but definitely looking in the long run, maybe getting into the coaching and seeing what that brings.
Yeah, and do you expect to be still at Burton whenever football does resume?
Yeah, probably, maybe. I've not got a contract next season there, and we were probably just about to start talking, but you never know if anyone else comes in the summer or whatever and takes a chance on me and sees me that I've played a lot of football over the last couple of years, that they might have a take a punt on me and whatever, and I'll just play it by ear. I'm just happy anyway playing away, and and worst case I'll keep going and play for anybody, because I mean these times make you realise how much you love it.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say these times make you realise how much you'd like to be a stay-at-home dad.
No chance. No chance.
Yeah, Stephen, you've been brilliant with your time, and look, I know it's obviously a very turbulent time personally as well, and I hope everything works out for your wife. She's obviously doing a brilliant job on the front line, and stay safe.
No problem, Nathan. Thanks for the shout, and look after yourself.
All right, you're welcome back to the football show this Thursday evening. If you missed Stephen Quinn, you'll be able to catch that online. Well worth listening to, a real good guy. Joe Molloy, sometimes a good guy, is on the line. How are you?
Nathan Murphy, never a good guy.
I didn't want Joe on, but he demanded, after listening to John Giles' all-time Arsenal 11, it was outrage. You could have just taken to Twitter like everybody else.
What's the biggest controversy in the John Giles 11?
I'll remind people then, I'll go through the John Giles 11 for anybody who missed it. And John isn't on social media, thankfully, so he couldn't, again, as I always point out, couldn't really care less what anybody says on Twitter about his selection. In goals, David Seaman, which I got to say was a surprise. I was expecting, from my conversation with him yesterday, I was expecting it to be Pat Jennings. Maybe he thought because Pat was in the Spurs team last week, He didn't need to be in there twice. A back four of Peter Storey, David O'Leary, Tony Adams, and Bob McNabb. So no Ashley Cole or Nigel Winterburn or Lee Dixon.
Or Sol
Campbell. The midfield three, where I think there's going to be a bit of controversy here. It's always going to be a difficult selection. The midfield three, Patrick Vieira and Liam Brady, which I think will be in almost everybody's, and Cesc Fabregas. No Robert Pires, no Mark Overmars.
Yeah.
You just sound disappointed, Joe, more than anything. And the front three, I thought it was going to be 2 from 3, but he went with all 3. Ian Wright, Thierry Henry, and Dennis Bergkamp. I think all 3 deserve their place.
Yeah.
Robin Van Persie, maybe. Could have put Overmars into an attacking position, but which of those 3 are you leaving out?
That's the thing. I never felt, I definitely thought if he was going with the 2, you'd have to leave out Ian Wright because you have to have Henry clearly, and probably you'd go with Bergkamp because of the genius. But it just feels wrong to leave out Ian Wright. He's so quintessentially Arsenal. He was a record goal scorer. He brings such a kind of presence to that team, you know, so you sort of want him in there. I think 4-3-3 is the best solution to that. Overmars, you know, to a point. Petit was a really nice player as well, but probably understandably doesn't make it. Pires jumped out to me as well. Maybe we all underestimate just how good Fabregas was. And he was quite amazing when he burst on the scene in a massive way. I mean, with the terrible hair and, you know, was he 16? Remember his first season? He was 16 and he was absolutely running games.
Yeah, he was. He was the best young midfielder by a long distance in Europe for 5 or 6 years.
Without the physical attributes as well. I mean, it wasn't like he was overpowering anyone. It wasn't like he was nippy and fast. You know, Jack Wilshere, when he burst on the scene, could beat a player and had that, you know, little bit of turn of pace. Fabregas, from a physical point of view, had very little that would have scared any Premier League or international player. So it was pure understanding of the game, passing ability, bravery to get on the ball. And that's a rare thing for a 16, 17, 18-year-old to have. That potentially comes when you're a few years down the line. Like, it is quite extraordinary that he burst on the scene and was able to do that in games.
He also had that nasty streak in him, though, even though he wasn't the most physical of players. Like, there was always something. There was always a bit of shithousery in Cesc Fabregas from a young age. Maybe he learned that at Arsenal and then he became the real leader of that more modern Arsenal. But Pires, you just think that Pires was so important to that Arsenal side, and he was just every time he touched the ball was just like a magnet to his foot. You can't remember Robert Pires ever giving the ball away.
I thought he was really average when he first arrived. He took a while to settle. I remember thinking this guy wasn't all that, and then, as you said, just blossomed into an unbelievable player. The lob over Schmeichel always jumps to mind. You know, just outrageous touch and imagination. A brilliant player, and you know, brave. I had thought physically he was struggling in England when he first arrived, but really adapted fantastically. Did it pain John to leave out Ashley Cole, or was that actually a straightforward decision in his mind?
You can listen back, Joe, and find that out for yourself.
Okay, but if I'm just asking with the intention of listening back.
I just listen back, Joe, is what I'd advise, okay?
No, I will.
Just go with me here.
But just say.
Listen, Joe, this is the power of modern radio. We haven't actually spoken to John yet. We're just pretending. Dear God, edit this out of the radio piece. Hello to everybody watching at home. I've given you all the secrets away. John has given us the team in advance, and it's actually only 5:30 in the evening right now.
Sorry, I did.
No, it's JP's fault. It's the producer's fault. He should have told you.
Sorry.
No, he's let you down badly, Joe. He's let both of us down really badly.
So what's happened here is that me and you are talking in advance of John explaining all the rationale. Okay, well, then the Ashley Cole thing, I will be listening back to. I mean, maybe he feels Cole played his best football post Arsenal at Chelsea, you know. But from memory, Ashley Cole, Thierry Henry, that left-hand side, that was pretty tasty.
And Ashley Cole, when we talk about modern fullbacks as well, was the one who had felt, certainly in English football, changed the game. He was a properly talented footballer who just energy up and down that left wing and was also a threat. And on the overlap, coming inside, no matter where. Like, you felt he was, even though he was a left back, he was a very much a key part of everything that Arsenal tried to do in an attacking sense. But then there's an obvious recency bias. It's not even that, because we remember Ashley Cole. We sort of remember Nigel Winterburn, but we don't remember Bob McNabb, who finished playing in 1975.
that is where John's knowledge trumps ours by a considerable
Well, this is
margin.
where you see you can argue, and he'll go, so tell me about Bob McNabb. Bob, eh?
Who was Bob McNabb anyway?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yes, you have to kind of give him a final word. Can I just, before we begin to wrap up, tell you of recent developments when it comes to what the Premier League are trying to do? They are having a meeting tomorrow morning, and they're really trying to put this whole thing to bed. The world of sport is starting to eke back into normality. Nathan, you'll be very excited to hear the PGA Tour in the last 2 hours have said they are, quote, very confident that the Charles Schwab Classic in Texas is going ahead on the 11th of June behind closed doors.
If ever there was a sport, Joe, that would be accepting of, a certain amount of people getting the coronavirus if they had to be there, I think it's golf. We'll plow on regardless.
So golf is planning to get ahead PGA Tour 11th of June. So what's happening tomorrow, what seems to have put a bit of pressure on Premier League now is legally they're starting to hit roadblocks. So tomorrow morning, they're all sitting around the table. The plan is, because the contracts all finish on the 30th of June, both player contracts and even things like Liverpool with New Balance all finish on the 30th of June. There are now 9 clubs in the Premier League in favour of just drawing the line at the 30th of June. And they need 14 clubs to agree to that for it to be passed. So the Guardian now understands that they're at 9 clubs of 14 because FIFA have given guidelines that, if your contract is up at the end of June, like Jeff Hendricks is up, Willians is up, Vertonghen is up, loads of players' contracts are up. The guideline from FIFA is, well, we can just extend it a while. But actually, it turns out when it comes to contractual law in England, that doesn't really count for very much. So a whole host of players, if they want, are legally free to say, I'm done. And hence, there is now a renewed sense that we should really try and push to get this thing done by the end of June. Or else, if we can't, and this is what the 9 clubs are in favour of, that that's it. It's not quite void. They don't have a Duckworth-Lewis method figured out. But effectively, they're saying, and 9 of the clubs are in favour of this now, if we get to 30th of June and we don't have this thing played, well, then I'm sorry, we're not going to play the remaining games. We'll figure out what happens to this year, be it null and void or some kind of expected wins kind of algorithm of some kind, but they're not going to continue. Tony Bloom at Brighton said, he's one of those against it. He said, I can see a point where we can't just keep waiting forever, but 30th of June is not that point. But maybe a bit of a sea change. If you've got 9 clubs saying, let's just draw the line at the 30th of June, you're not a million miles away off 14 clubs wanting to go that way. So that's an interesting development. That meeting's happening tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens there.
That has flipped quite quickly from a week ago, and you'd wonder what has sparked that change. Maybe it is a contractual situation, because I always did think, despite FIFA's guidance, you look at Willian. As far as I know, Chelsea have let Willian go back to Brazil. If you're in his position coming towards the end of June, you're thinking, I'm probably going to get a move this summer on a huge deal. Why would I bother coming back? Why would I risk it? Okay, yes, I should come and play for my club, but actually, it makes no sense financially in any way for me to come back and play in these games. And if 1 or 2 players decide I'm not doing it, well, then the whole thing is up in the air. One other interesting thing they were talking about was that actually, if they were to play 2 more games, every team would have played 29 matches. So if Manchester City played Arsenal and Sheffield United played Aston Villa, every team would have played 29 games, and that they would just go with those league positions, and whether it's a 20-team or 22-team Premier League in terms of prize money. It does seem as though that maybe Sky's attitude has softened somewhat in terms of paying out the remainder of the money. So initially it was, we have to finish this or Sky won't give us the 300 million that we're owed. That Sky may be more open to give us more matches next season. So I think they're still due about 40 games. Give us 40 extra games next season or over the next 2 seasons, or give us 40 extra games at the end of this rights deal. That they may be able to work it out like that. But yeah, it does seem as though there's been a definite shift in attitude over the last week.
It seems that way. The legal advice coming in to say, FIFA, that's great and everything, but actually we're talking about contracts, we're talking about law here. It doesn't count for very much. That seems to have come into play in a significant way. Things probably, maybe to a lesser extent, but things like Nike and New Balance and one of the quotes in the Guardian piece was there's, maybe a growing sense that, well, to what extent do we want to impact on 2 seasons? If this season has to be a complete mess and nobody's satisfied with it, there will come a point where we can't jeopardize the following season. And that is also a bit of a sea change. What could become crucial here is what method they find to sort an unfinished season out, because what they all acknowledged, and I suspect even a lot of the 9 clubs in favour of taking this route, what they all acknowledged is that the likelihood of playing all the games before the 30th of June is pretty much not going to happen. You know, so when they vote for drawing a line at 30th of June, they're doing so in the knowledge that they're not going to finish everything. So, like, what method can you dream up that satisfies everyone, especially when relegation is in play? I don't know.
Like, there's none. There's none. Because I was thinking about even that proposal of saying if Aston Villa were to beat Sheffield United, Aston Villa would move out of the relegation zone. But certain teams have played Liverpool once, certain teams have played Liverpool twice, and Liverpool have beaten every team with the exception of Watford. So therefore, if you've played them or you haven't played them, you've got an advantage. Likewise with Manchester City. So it's hard to see how you can just suddenly say, well, we've got to 35 games and that's enough. What's the point of that? You're as well to pull it now. You either finish it or you don't.
Yeah, it's very arbitrary and it'll be deeply unfair. So, they like in that piece I was reading in The Guardian, there's still a sense that, well, look, we don't want to void it. You know, like, we're still not talking about voiding it, but as you said, they will quickly realise how difficult it is to find something fair. And then, you know, maybe someone flies a voiding kite and who knows. So it's still incredibly up in the air. They're going to meet tomorrow. 9 clubs in favour of drawing this line on 30th of June. It's probably hard to imagine another 5 are going to change their minds overnight. But kind of interesting to see how quickly it is changing from a definitive, we finish this season no matter what, no matter when, to now people looking around saying, well, look, legally we're not in a great spot here and, well, maybe we're just going to have to think about it.
And all this in the day that Matt Hancock has said that Britain's going to remain in lockdown for another 3 weeks at least, which is going to bring us well into May. So how teams can even go back training and plan to be back by mid-June, it seems impossible. They should just follow the Scots, who, it was very straightforward, as I think I outlined last night. Just do what the Scots did.
If anything, it was too simple.
You can remind us exactly what
last night was too simple a solution, I felt. Hancock was on Piers Morgan this morning being harangued over not cutting his wages.
Oh yeah,
and there was
he's going to work harder.
You weren't afraid to call for the footballers to cut their wages, Matt. Why aren't you? Why should you not take a pay cut as well? And he didn't handle it very well.
Well, there's a shock. We have time for one more story. Ronaldinho. I thought this was a joke, actually. I thought this was some sort of a documentary or something, but it turns out, no, he's actually in jail.
This is very serious by all accounts. He's in trouble in Paraguay. Anti-corruption charges. There's a big anti-corruption sting going on. Ronaldinho and his brother seem to have got themselves caught up in this whole thing. His lawyer is saying there's a difference between stupidity and guilt, so they're maintaining a serious claim of innocence, I'm sure. But this is real. He's in serious enough trouble. So he spent some time in jail, and now what's happened is he has moved to a very nice hotel, colonial-style hotel, the Palmorga Hotel, which is 64,000 square feet, and he's the only one in it, basically. He's in this hotel. It's owned by the Barcelona group, though the owner has said that's pure coincidence. And so apparently he spent a lot of time in the gym. They've bought him footballs, so he's in the giant ballroom kicking footballs around. He's not allowed any visitors. Potentially he faces up to 5 years in jail if this goes badly for him. So this is very real. I thought this was a bit of a nothing story as well, but Ronaldinho is effectively under a kind of house arrest at an absolutely enormous hotel in Paraguay. No visitors allowed. There's kind of like a Great Gatsby aspect to all this. And he's kicking footballs. The owner said he's juggling footballs in the ballroom, keeping himself occupied. And his lawyers are frantically trying to avoid 5 years in jail for Ronaldinho.
To be back partying in Barcelona again.
Well, indeed.
That's what we all want to see. That'll be normality. Thanks, Joe. Lee Westwood, we should mention. He was on Golf Weekly. Lee Westwood, former world number 1. That's just the way we roll these days in Golf Weekly. Who's laughing now?
Richie McCormick.
Cheers, Joe.
All right.